Dr. Jordan Peterson had a really strange and inorganic rise to fame. If you saw this video, this was the first viral moment that really put Peterson on the map. In the video, the young woman behind the camera approaches Peterson with a hard-hitting question. He responds with his typical semantics in the middle of a growing crowd of diverse students. And one by one, the young men slowly begin to approach him to praise him for being such a good guy. He's dressed in bright white and stands out as he looks intensely into the camera and tries to sell himself to the online audience.
So, I have 150 lectures on YouTube. There's 500 hours of my views.
Order versus chaos. It's Jordan Peterson's entire shtick. And these orchestrated theatrics are a perfect example. Chaos is instigated for whatever reason by him or whoever else, and then his job is to come in and create some kind of order out of it, lead the sheep towards whatever direction he's paid to lead them towards. In lectures, he often talks about the underlying meanings of symbols and dynamics, subconscious imagery or wordplay used to provoke or invoke some kind of belief or reaction from the viewer. He's essentially a professional propagandist. But lately, Peterson's mask has begun to slip. People are noticing the juxtaposition or inconsistencies within his strongly held political beliefs. But here you'll see a correlation between what he talks about and what he does. So first, we'll see a clip of Jordan Peterson speaking to college students, and he's describing the tactics used in World War II in order to persuade armies into committing genocide. In the next clip, we'll see Jordan Peterson using those very same tactics in order to sell and promote Israel to his devoted fans.
The discourse that precedes genocide in genocidal states, and the enhancement of a sense of victimization on the part of one of the groups, usually the group that's going to commit the genocide. First of all, because I indicated my desire that the authorities in Israel give the terrorists who invaded their land and tortured and killed their citizens the hell that they most truly deserve. The enhancement of a sense of victimization on the part of one of the groups, usually the group that's going to commit the genocide. First of all, their sense of being victims is much heightened by the demagogues who are trying to stir up this sort of hatred.
That barrier, that obstacle of refusing to accept a Jewish state at any boundary has disappeared. Where does it persist? In the Palestinians, who are 1% to 2% of the entire Arab world, denying us our historical and present rights to live anywhere in this land, refusing to any kind of practical compromise, refusing to accept the declaration of Israel in the UN.
So whenever people are beating the victim drum, they'll cover that up with empathy, roughly speaking. We're speaking on behalf of the oppressed. It's like, maybe you are, but maybe you're no saint because, you're so sure that you're a saint and you're only speaking from the position of good.
The easier way is to say to finish them out, but you really can't say that. So basically to free them in their own place.
You think that Palestinians should just be kicked out?
To say it in nice words, kicked out, yeah, but to be in their own jail. That's it.
Jail?
In their own place, we give them food, we give them their job, but at the end of the day, if you do give an animal food, and I'm trying to talk nice here.
Basically say, look, you've been oppressed in a variety of ways, and these are the people who did it, and they're not going to stop doing it, and this time we're going to get them before they get us.
They, Palestinians, cling on to the fantasy of eliminating Israel, denying us our historical and present rights to live anywhere in this land.
Most of the kids there that are getting killed, I never support little children dying. But if you look at the bigger picture, but most of them will grow up not only supporting Hamas, but joining them.
And this time we're going to get them before they get us. It's something like that. And so there's something very pathological about the enhancement of victimization, which is, well, see, that the problem as far as I'm concerned with it is it's not thought through very well. You certainly can't divide the world neatly into perpetrators and victims and then assume that you're only in the victim class and then assume that that gives you certain, like access to certain forms of redress, let's say. It gets dangerous very rapidly if you do that sort of thing. So
it's not our fault that we are stronger than them.
Yeah, it's also not our fault that we defend ourselves and we have every right to defend ourselves. Don't hate us Jews, we're really nice people. And
The intellectuals came in and said, this is unfair that this happened to you. You've actually been victimized and now it's your opportunity to go have your revenge.
On October the 7th, you tweeted, "Give them hell, Netanyahu. Enough is enough."
The intellectuals came in and said, this is unfair that this happened to you. You've actually been victimized and now it's your opportunity to go have your revenge.
Netanyahu.
And so that's exactly what happened.
Many of the deceptive tactics used in World War II that Peterson discusses are being utilized by himself and the people he consults today on the world stage.
There was this hypothesis in Germany that the Jews in particular were operating as a fifth column and undermining the German war effort because, of course, the Germans blamed the Jews and a variety of other people for actually setting up the conditions that made the war necessary. And so when the police and the Palestinians over the last 6 decades, and very little progress has been made on that front. And I think the reason for that is that there are incredibly entrenched interests in whose interest it is to prolong and make as bloody as possible this conflict. And so there's no hope for peace under those circumstances. And for the Islamic fundamentalists, so-called Islamic fundamentalists who are fostering the conflict, Germans blamed the Jews and a variety of other people for actually setting up the conditions that made the war necessary.
Make peace with the rest of the Arab world unless you make peace first with the Palestinians. There's a problem there.
Right.
Well, you can't, because the Palestinians are not interested in peace with Israel. They're interested in the peace without Israel. They're not interested in a state next to Israel. They're interested in a state instead of Israel. So if you wait for the Palestinians, you'll wait another quarter of a century, another half century,
When the communists came in, they described those landholders as parasites, essentially. And so when the intellectuals came in and described the reason that these people should be treated as parasites and profiteers. If you own territory, a vast swath of land, and you're doing nothing to it, and someone comes and squats on it and spends a lot of time improving it, at some point they actually develop a valid legal claim to the property itself. And so, leave us alone, you centralizers of power, you worshippers of Gaia, you sacrificers of the wealth and property of others, you would-be planetary saviors. There seems to be something intrinsic to our notion of valid ownership that if you're going to occupy a territory, you actually have to do something with it that's productive. And so that's at least part of the claim you're making at the moment, to buttress the notion that the Jewish people have a valid claim to the present territory.
Well, and
there were a lot of movement back and forth,
yes,
but the Jews have actually taken the land and made something of it.
Well, I'm saying
it is true in some real sense that the fate of the world depends on the decisions of the people of Israel. Leave us alone, you centralizers of power. You Machiavellian pretenders and virtue signalers. Oh, you make yourself a shining light on the hill, right? You attract people here because of what you're capable of doing. Objecting to power, all the while you gathered around you madly. Leave us alone. You show the world what the holy city could look like, because we need it. We need it, and it's up to you to do it. You would-be planetary saviors, leave us alone, to prosper or not, as a result of our own choices, as a result of our own actions, in the exercise of our own requisite and irreducible responsibility. Leave us alone. We have to do something with it that's productive. But the Jews have actually taken the land and made something of it.
Well,
You've consistently promoted the idea that America was built on Judeo-Christian values. However, as a devout Christian, I have difficulty accepting the term, given Judaism's rejection of Jesus. Christians believe Jesus Christ is God. In contrast, the Talmud, a central Jewish holy book, teaches that Jesus is burning in hellfire and excrement. And while the New Testament tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us, Sovereign 15 of the Talmud states that even the best of the Gentiles should be killed.
Are you surprised by the anti-Israel sentiment in this country, the hate speech, the rallies, and the protests? Well, as a Christian, I'm not. Why? Because I understand that anti-Israel is the same thing as anti-Christ. Watch this.
Nobody can mess with Israel because God has the ultimate iron dome of protection, and he's not afraid to use it. Just ask the plagues of Egypt. Throughout biblical scripture, God has made several promises and statements about Israel. In Genesis 17, God is depicted as choosing Israel as his chosen people and making a covenant with them. And in Deuteronomy 7, God expresses his love for Israel. Before messing with Israel, nations might want to remember that they turned water into wine, so turning their armies into dust wouldn't be much of a challenge.
That's right, the battle lines are being drawn. You are either with God or you are against him. If you are ready to be with God and with his chosen people, hit subscribe or follow.
Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, and the desires of the eyes, and pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. Children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have continued with us. But they went out, that it might become plain that they all are not of us. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all have knowledge. I write to you, not because you do not know the truth, but because you know it, and because no lie is of the truth. Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ? This is the Antichrist, he who denies the Father and the Son. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever confesses the Son has the Father also.
Everybody acknowledges that Jewish chosenness is a reason for anti-Semitism. However, as I pointed out, Jews are 0.2% of the world. Who gives a damn if 0.2% of the world thinks they're chosen? The Chinese think they're the center of the world.
Well, chosen and successful might be a very...
And the devil took him up, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time, and said to him, To you I will give all this authority and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whom I will. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours.
Chosen and successful might be a very...
Thank you. That's correct. That's exactly right. So deep down, people don't laugh when Jews say they're chosen. There's been a tremendous amount of resentment of the fact that maybe they are. But
if you then will worship me, it will all be yours.
Relationship between archetypal symbolism and the biological underpinnings of the human psyche. And then you can see that manifesting itself in this sort of propaganda and the political positions that come out of it. You tap into the archetypal dimension, that's chaos versus order. You can place one against the other however you want. It's a lot easier to trumpet moral virtue by siding with the hypothetical victims than it is to celebrate the accomplishment of the conquerors.
These things saith the first and the last, which was dead, and is alive. I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty. But thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer.
Because the elites, the foreign policy elites and the experts and the intellectuals explained, you cannot make peace with the rest of the Arab world unless you make peace first with the Palestinians. There's a problem there.
Right.
Well, you can't, because the Palestinians are not interested in peace with Israel. They're interested in the peace without Israel. They're not interested in a state next to Israel. They're interested in a state instead of Israel.
You're going to demoralize young people to be ethical? That's your theory? It's like you should go home and think about that for like a year. And I'm passionate about this, because you have no idea how many people that's killing. You have no idea. I see people everywhere, all over the world. They're so demoralized, especially young people with a conscience, because they've been told since they were little that there's nothing to them but corruption and power. It's like, how the hell do you expect them to react? Let's imagine that Israel moves against Hamas with its usual effectiveness, and they start winning, in a serious way, and the casualties mount, It's like, how the hell do you expect them to react? If I was in Israel's shoes, I suppose I would likely do much the same as they are doing.
What message does that send? That mythical beheaded babies, because they were Israeli, are to be reported on when the incident never happened, but that Palestinian babies and children, when they're beheaded and their limbs are severed and they're found hanging from trees with half of their body missing, that they are not worth the coverage to report on their experience, on their premature death at the hands of Israel and the United States. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces tied explosives to the body of an 80-year-old Palestinian man who was forced to clear booby-trapped houses, and once they released him, they shot and killed him and his wife?
Suppose I would likely do much the same as they are doing.
Did you know that Israeli soldiers were captured on film raping a Palestinian hostage? And when news of this came to light, Israeli far-right politicians and soldiers and ordinary people protested outside of the facility where the soldier was being held, demanding that he be released. And in parallel, the Israeli Knesset engaged in debates on the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinian hostages.
I suppose I would likely do much the same as they are doing.
One of the soldiers who was involved in the rape had a media tour all around Israeli media stations and took off his ski mask and was revered as a national hero by members of Israeli society. Did you know that a young Palestinian boy by the name of Saddam Rajab was killed in the occupied West Bank after an Israeli occupation soldier shot him in the stomach?
I suppose I would likely do much the same as they are doing.
Even though the evidence is right there, it was still responded to by supporters of Israel as being fake or being what they call Pallywood, because not only does Israel kill Palestinians with impunity, but Israel's supporters, to believe that their ideology is morally justified, when they do see images of Israel's policies against Palestinians, they just claim that they're fake, that they didn't happen, that they're made up entirely by Palestinians to claim global sympathy. Did you know that Israeli occupation forces recently killed a 2-year-old Palestinian girl by the name of Layla al-Khatib, who was sitting down to eat dinner with her family in occupied Jenin? She was shot in the head by an Israeli sniper. Not only did the Israeli sniper shoot her, but then the Israeli occupation forces prevented her and her family from rushing to get medical care, and she died.
I suppose I would likely do much the same as they are doing.
This, of course, is not an aberration. This happens all the time on a daily basis. Prior to October 7th, 2022 had been the deadliest year for Palestinian children killed by Israeli occupation forces in the occupied West Bank in 15 years.
It's like, how the hell do you expect them to react?
But did you even know about it? Did you know that in 16 months of genocide in Gaza, Israel has managed to halve the life expectancy in Gaza? If that isn't proof of genocide, I don't know what could be proof of genocide. Did you know that Israel withholds Palestinian bodies and prevents Palestinians that it killed from being returned to their families? Over 600 Palestinian bodies are being illegally held by Israel, some since the 1960s. Did you know that if you go on Google Maps and you look for satellite images of Beit Hanun, you will see that Israel has completely destroyed and erased that village in Gaza, that city in Gaza, and instead replaced all of the buildings, the stores, the homes, the parks, the schools, the mosques, the churches, with thick mud embedded with Israeli tank marks in the shape of a Star of David. Not a single corporate mainstream media outlet covered that story, thought it would be important. Consider, for example, as part of Israel's genocide, Israel has destroyed the overwhelming majority of all the infrastructure that is related to the provision of basic services like electricity, like water, like sanitation. It destroyed 90% of the housing units in Gaza. 90%. If that isn't genocide, I don't know what is.
How do you feel about the people that have been killed?
In Gaza, there are terrorists.
All of them?
All of them. It's very hard to see how they die there on the border. I can't see it.
It's very sad because the people in Gaza, they don't have a future because they don't have jobs.
I want to use peace. This is what I want to use. Not bullets and not gas and not nothing.
I'm not a Zionist, I am Jewish. I'm not a Zionist, I am Jewish. I want to be a true Jew, like we were in the past, 150 years ago, when we used to live here in peace and happiness. I want all the Palestinians to return here to where they came from.
One of Peterson's main talking points as of lately is to try to suggest that Palestine has some sort of stronghold and pull on the mainstream media, and that's why people aren't falling for his deception. The irony is laughable. He says that the backlash comes from narcissistic psychopaths who don't understand the dynamics of war and the inevitable casualties that mount up. But it really doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that when Israel prevents an entire population of people from leaving a specific area and then bomb and destroy that same area with them in it, then casualties don't become an unavoidable circumstance of war, but rather the casualties are inevitable. They're certain. There's absolutely no way to justify these kinds of actions by the Israeli government. And not every Jew in Israel agrees or should be held accountable for what its government is doing, just like not every Palestinian is a terrorist that should be wiped off the face of this earth. We're starting to see Jordan Peterson's mask start to crack. The very politicians and corrupt, bought and paid for actors on the world stage that Jordan Peterson for so long has condemned, it's starting to make itself very clear that Jordan Peterson is no different. He's bought and paid for. Many times when he goes on public appearances like on Joe Rogan or on the news, he'll be talking about his personal opinion and he's literally reading a script. He can't even figure it out without reading the script, because he has certain guidelines that he needs to stay in and he has certain things that he needs to present, and that's why he has a script. He's scripted. He's an actor. He's a phony. He's a fraud.
Just a brief introduction about yourself. You do many things, but if you can describe yourself.
Well, I'm a professor at the University of Toronto so far. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have an active clinical practice. I'm a business consultant. I do executive coaching mostly for senior partners of big law firms. I run a testing business for the world's biggest early stage technology incubator in California called the Founder Institute. They've started 2,000 businesses in the last 5 years, and I've screened all 30,000 of their entrants because I know how to predict entrepreneurial ability. I designed a program called Future Authoring. I worked on the UN Secretary General's High Panel for Sustainability, the report that was delivered in, I believe, 2013, and rewrote the underlying narrative to strip out most of the ideological claptrap.
Unbelievably dangerous way to think, too one-sided. And the idea that you have to impose limits to growth on people in order to have a sustainable planet. And that's allied with a view that...
I worked on the UN Secretary General's High Panel for Sustainability and rewrote the underlying narrative to strip out most of the ideological claptrap.
They're also predicated on the assumption that it's okay to go after a professional for expressing political criticism. And the issue is, how do you identify the psychopathic pretenders? And it's even worse now. And so then the question is, how do you draw the line? And that's kind of what because I've been watching these right-wing They're not right-wing. These psychopathic types manipulate the edge of the conservative movement for their own gain.
Right.
And a lot of that's cloaked in anti-Semitic guise. There's plenty of anti-Semitism on the left too, by the way. So it's not unique to the right.
Well, particularly now.
Yes, particularly now.
Right.
And so how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? Do you have a conceptual system worked out for that? Like,
they're also predicated on the assumption that it's okay to go after a professional for expressing political criticism.
For The Agenda with Steve Paikin, I'm Jordan Peterson. Their sense of being victims is much heightened by the demagogues who are trying to stir up this sort of hatred. So they basically say, look, you've been oppressed in a variety of ways.
Enough is enough.
And these are the people who did it, and they're not going to stop doing it, and this time we're going to get them before they get us.
Give them hell, Netanyahu.
See, the problem, as far as I'm concerned with it, is it's not thought through very well. See, the problem, as far as I'm concerned with it, is not thought through very well.
You are so cold, you are so cold, colder than anyone I've ever known. Colder than ice and colder than snow. It's the darkness in your eyes that smiles when you tell your lies. All the games that you devise, and your evil hypnosis when I didn't notice. You hacked my emotions. You're so cold, you're frozen. You are so cold, you are so cold, colder than anyone I've ever known. Colder than ice and colder than snow. You're probably colder than I even know. You're probably colder than you even show. And you love to say that I am insane. This is what I became. You made me this way. I am to blame for the time that I stayed. I knew that I shouldn't, but I did anyway. Who hurt you so bad? You had to be so numb. Go back to whatever hole you crawled from. You are so cold, you are so cold, colder than anyone I've ever known. Colder than anyone I've ever known. You're colder than ice and colder than it's the darkness in your eyes that smiles when you tell your lies. You try but you can't cry. And everything you put me through, you know you didn't have to do, but you do it cause it's a gain to you. You are so cold, you are so cold, colder than anyone I've ever known. Colder than anyone I've ever known. You're colder than ice and colder than snow. That was the last time I make those mistakes that I made when I gave you a chance and believed you had changed. Who hurt you so bad you had to be so numb? Go back to whatever hole you crawled. You are so cold, you are so cold, colder than anyone I've ever known. Colder than anyone I've ever known. You're colder than ice and colder than snow. You're probably colder